The ship called Horizon's Edge moved slowly through the darkness of space. It was a small vessel, not impressive at all compared to the massive warships that belonged to the great alien empires. But the people inside this ship were not warriors. They were diplomats, and they had come a very long way from their home planet called Earth. Ambassador Park Do-hwan stood near the window of the ship and watched as the Galactic Council station grew larger and larger. It was enormous. The station was built in the shape of a ring, and it floated in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by thousands of stars. Lights covered every part of it, and hundreds of ships moved around it like small fish swimming near a whale. Do-hwan was a man of 53 years. His hair was gray at the sides, and his face had many small lines from years of smiling and thinking. He wore simple gray robes that marked him as a diplomat of Earth. Nothing about him looked special or dangerous. He was just an ordinary man, or at least that is what everyone believed. Behind him, his aide Yoon Hana was checking their documents for the 100th time. She was younger than Do-hwan, maybe 30 years old, with sharp eyes that noticed everything. She had worked with the ambassador for 5 years, and she knew him better than most people. But even she did not know all his secrets. "Sir, we will arrive at the docking bay in 10 minutes, Hana said. Do-hwan turned away from the window and smiled at her. "Are you nervous, Hana?" "A little," she admitted. "This is the first time humans have been invited to the Galactic Council. If we make a mistake, it could be very bad for Earth." "We will not make mistakes," Do-hwan said calmly. "We will be polite, we will be patient, and we will show them that humanity wants only peace and friendship." The Horizon's Edge entered the docking bay of the station. When the doors opened, Do-hwan and his team of 6 diplomats stepped out onto the metal floor. Immediately, they felt that they were being watched. The council station was full of aliens. There were so many different kinds that it was hard to count them all. Some were tall and thin, with skin that looked like blue glass. These were the Velthari, and they were the leaders of the council. Others were short and covered in thick brown fur. Some had too many eyes. Some had no eyes at all. Some walked on 2 legs, some on 4. And some floated in the air using technology that humans could not understand. All of them stopped what they were doing to stare at the humans. A Velthari official approached the group. He was taller than any human, almost 3 meters high, and his body made soft sounds like wind chimes when he moved. His face had no expression because his people were made of crystal and could not smile or frown. "You are the representatives from the planet called Earth?" the Velthari asked. His voice was cold and echoed strangely. "Yes," Do-hwan said with a small bow. "I am Ambassador Park Do-hwan. We thank the Galactic Council for allowing us to visit." "You are late," the Velthari said. "The other delegates have been waiting." This was not true. Do-hwan knew they had arrived exactly on time. But he did not argue. He simply bowed again and said, "We apologize for any inconvenience." The official turned and walked away, expecting them to follow. As they walked through the halls of the station, Do-hwan noticed how the other aliens looked at them. Some looked curious. Most looked at them the way a person might look at an insect that had crawled onto their dinner table. Hana walked close to Do-hwan and whispered, "They do not seem happy to see us." "They do not know us yet," Do-hwan replied quietly. "Fear and disrespect often come from not understanding. We must be patient." The council chamber was the largest room Do-hwan had ever seen. It was round, with seats arranged in circles that rose higher and higher toward the ceiling. Each section belonged to a different species. The Velthari sat at the highest point, looking down at everyone else. Below them sat the other powerful races, and at the very bottom, in the smallest and least comfortable seats, sat the humans. The Velthari High Speaker stood, and the room became silent. This being was ancient, its crystal body darker than the others, with cracks that showed its great age. When it spoke, its voice filled the entire chamber. The Council recognizes the presence of the species called humanity, from the planet Earth, in the system they call Sol. They have requested the right to trade with Council members and to be recognized as a spacefaring civilization. A sound like laughter came from one section of the chamber. Doan looked and saw creatures that looked like giant insects. They had hard shells and many legs, and their eyes reflected light like mirrors. These were the Morkeen. "Look at them," one of the Morkeen said loudly. "So small, so soft. Their planet is a death world, full of poison and disaster, yet they themselves are weak like newborn larvae." Several other alien groups made sounds of agreement. Doan stood slowly. "May I speak?" The High Speaker made a gesture that meant yes. "Honored members of the Council," Doan began, his voice calm and clear. "Humanity does not claim to be powerful. We are young among the stars. We have only recently learned to travel faster than light. But we come here with open hands and open hearts. We wish only to learn, to trade, and to live in peace with our galactic neighbors." "Peace," said another delegate. This one was from the Groth Dominion. He was reptilian, with green scales and yellow eyes. His name was Drathvok, and he was a military commander, not a diplomat. "Humans speak of peace because they cannot fight. We have studied your species. You have no claws, no venom, no armor. Your bodies are soft and break easily. You live for less than 100 years. You are nothing." Doan looked at Drathvok for a long moment. His face remained calm, but Hana, who was watching him carefully, saw something change in his eyes. It was only for a second, and then it was gone. "You are correct," Doan said. "We have no claws. We have no venom. Our bodies are not strong. But we have survived on our world for many thousands of years. We have faced ice ages, plagues, wars, and natural disasters that killed most life on our planet. And we are still here. Perhaps there are different kinds of strength." Drathvok made a hissing sound that might have been a laugh. "Words, only words. We shall see what humans are really made of." Hana noticed that Drathvok looked at two other delegates as he said this. They were from different species, but they both nodded slightly. It was a small movement, easy to miss. But Hana did not miss it. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. She tried to catch Doan's attention, but the ambassador was already sitting down, his face peaceful, his hands folded in his lap. He looked like a man who had nothing to fear. And perhaps Hana thought he did not. Perhaps it was everyone else who should be afraid, but that was a foolish thought. Doan was just a man. An ordinary aging diplomat from a small planet in an unimportant part of the galaxy. She pushed the thought away and focused on the council meeting. She would remember this moment later. She would remember how she had ignored her instincts. She would remember how she had looked at Doan and seen only what he wanted her to see. The truth would come soon enough. And when it came, nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. The second day of negotiations began badly and grew worse with every hour. Doan sat in his small seat at the bottom of the council chamber and listened as alien after alien explained why humanity did not deserve trade rights. The Velthari said humans were too primitive. The Morkeen said humans were too aggressive. The Groth said humans bred too quickly and would spread across the galaxy like a disease. Doan answered each complaint with patience and logic. He never raised his voice. He never showed anger. He simply explained, again and again, that humanity wanted only friendship. Hana sat beside him and took notes, but her mind was not fully on the meeting. She kept thinking about the look that had passed between Drathvok and the other delegates yesterday. She kept watching the Groth commander, who sat in his section with his soldiers around him, They were not diplomats. They were warriors, and they had no reason to be in a peace council. During a break in the meeting, Hana pulled Do-hwan aside. They stood in a small hallway outside the chamber, away from the other aliens. "Sir, I think something is wrong," she said quietly. Do-hwan looked at her with gentle eyes. "What have you seen?" "The Groth. They are not here to negotiate. They have soldiers with them. Real soldiers. And yesterday, I saw Draftvok signal to at least 2 other delegations. I think they are planning something." Do-hwan nodded slowly. "I have noticed the same things." "Then we should leave," Hana said urgently. "We should go back to our ship and return to Earth. We can try again later, when it is safer. If we leave now, we will never be allowed to return," Do-hwan said. "The Council will say we are cowards. They will say humans cannot be trusted to keep their word. We must stay. But sir, if they attack us, we cannot defend ourselves. We have no weapons. We are only 7 people." Do-hwan smiled. It was a strange smile, sad and knowing. "Hana, do you trust me?" "Of course, sir." "Then trust me now. Whatever happens today, stay behind me. Keep the others behind me. Do not run. Do not fight. Just stay close." Before Hana could ask what he meant, a sound echoed through the station. It was an alarm, loud and frightening. Red lights began to flash on the walls. "What is happening?" Hana asked. The answer came quickly. Groth soldiers appeared at both ends of the hallway. They wore black armor and carried energy weapons that glowed with dangerous light. Draftvok walked between them, his yellow eyes bright with excitement. "Ambassador Park Do-hwan of Earth," Draftvok said, his voice full of pleasure. "You and your people are now prisoners of the Groth Dominion." Do-hwan did not move. His face remained calm. "This is a violation of council law. We are diplomats. We have protection under galactic treaties." Draftvok laughed. It was an ugly sound, like rocks grinding together. "The council has decided that humans are too dangerous to be allowed into galactic society. Your species grows too fast. Your technology advances too quickly. In 100 years, you might challenge our power. We cannot allow this. The council decided this?" Do-hwan asked. "Enough members of the council," Draftvok said. "The Velthari will look the other way. They always do. It is easier for them to let us handle the dirty work." The soldiers pushed Do-hwan and his team back into the main chamber. The room was different now. Energy barriers covered all the exits. Many of the alien delegates had left, but some remained to watch. The Morkeen were there, clicking their legs with excitement. 2 other species had soldiers standing with the Groth. They were all part of this plan. Hana counted the enemies. There were at least 50 soldiers, all armed, all trained for combat. The humans had nothing, not even a knife. The other human diplomats gathered around Do-hwan. They were scared. Hana could see it in their faces. But Do-hwan stood in front of them like a wall, and somehow his calm presence made them less afraid. "What do you want from us?" Do-hwan asked. Draftvok walked toward him slowly. "First, we want to make an example of you. When the galaxy sees what we do to human diplomats, no one will ever trust your species again. Then we will go to your planet. Earth will become a colony of the Groth Dominion. Your people will work in our mines and factories. Those who resist will die, and if we cooperate, you will still die. But perhaps we will kill you quickly." Draftvok smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "We are not without mercy." One of the human diplomats, a young man named Cho Taiwan, stepped forward. "You cannot do this. There are laws. There are rules." A Groth soldier struck Taiwan with the back of his weapon. The young man fell to the floor, blood running from his head. Hana moved to help him, but Do-hwan held up his hand, stopping her. "Stay behind me," he said. His voice was different now. Quieter. Deeper. All of you. Stay behind me. Drathvok grabbed Dowan by the front of his robes and lifted him off the ground. The ambassador was light. Human bodies were so fragile, so easy to break. You speak of different kinds of strength, Drathvok said, bringing his face close to Dowan's. Show me this strength. Show me what humans can do. He threw Dowan to the ground. The ambassador hit the floor hard. One of the soldiers kicked him in the ribs. Another struck him across the face, and blood sprayed from his mouth onto the white floor of the council chamber. The aliens in the audience made sounds of approval. This was entertainment to them. A small, weak creature being beaten by stronger ones. It was the natural order of things. Drathvok drew his ceremonial blade. It was a long, curved sword made of metal that was darker than night. Groth commanders used these blades to execute enemies. It was a tradition that went back thousands of years. Do you have any last words, human? Drathvok asked. Any final message for your pathetic species? Dowan was on his knees, blood dripping from his face onto his gray robes. He looked up at Drathvok and then he looked at the council members who were watching. The Velthari High Speaker was there, standing in its elevated seat, doing nothing to stop this murder. I have a question, Dowan said. His voice was calm, even now. Have any of you read the archives of the precursors? Drathvok paused. The archives were ancient texts, written by a civilization that had existed millions of years ago, before any current species had evolved. They contained records of many things, including information about planets and species that were considered dangerous. What do the archives have to do with anything? Drathvok demanded. Earth is mentioned in the archives, Dowan said. So is humanity. The precursors visited our planet long ago, when we were still living in caves. Do you know what they wrote about us? I do not care about ancient history. They wrote a warning, Dowan continued. They said that humans should never be attacked. They said that something sleeps inside humanity. Something old. Something terrible. Something that must never be awakened. Drathvok laughed again. Fairy tales? Stories to frighten children. I see no monsters here. I see only a bleeding old man about to die. He raised his blade high above his head. The dark metal caught the light and gleamed. Goodbye, Ambassador. The blade came down, and Dowan caught it. He caught it with his bare hand, his fingers wrapped around the sharp edge. The metal should have cut through his flesh like butter. Instead, the blade shattered. Pieces of dark metal flew across the chamber, some of them striking Groth soldiers and cutting their scales. Drathvok stared at his broken sword. Then he stared at Dowan. The ambassador rose slowly to his feet. Blood still dripped from the wound on his palm, but as everyone watched, the wound began to close. The skin pulled itself together. In seconds, there was only smooth flesh, as if he had never been cut at all. Dowan looked up, and his eyes had changed. They were still human eyes, but behind them, something else was looking out. Something ancient. Something that had been sleeping for a very, very long time. When he spoke, his voice carried sounds that should not come from a human throat. It was like many voices speaking together, from different times, different places, different ages of history. You were warned, Dowan said. The archives told you what we are. You chose not to believe. The temperature in the chamber dropped. Frost began to form on the floor around Dowan's feet. His shadow moved on the ground, but it did not move with his body. It stretched in directions that made no sense, reaching toward the Groth soldiers like dark fingers. Drathvok took a step backward. For the first time in his life, he felt something he had never felt before. He felt afraid. What are you? He whispered. Dowan smiled, and it was not a human smile. I am what humanity chose to forget, he said. I am what sleeps in our blood. I am the memory of 100,000 years of survival. I am the hunter in the dark. And you have made a terrible mistake." The lights in the chamber flickered and died. The screaming began. Darkness filled the council chamber. Not ordinary darkness, but something deeper, something that felt alive. The emergency lights tried to turn on, but they flickered and died almost immediately. The only light came from the energy weapons of the Graf soldiers, and that light seemed weak and small against the shadows that moved around them. Hannah pressed herself against the wall with the other human diplomats. She could not see Do-Hwan anymore, but she could feel him. Everyone could feel him. It was like standing next to a fire that burned cold instead of hot. Open fire. Drathvok screamed. His voice cracked with fear. "Shoot the human! Kill him!" The soldiers obeyed. Beams of energy shot through the darkness toward where Do-Hwan stood. The beams were bright enough to light up the whole chamber for a moment, and in that moment, everyone saw something impossible. Do-Hwan was still standing in the same place. The energy beams hit his chest, his arms, his face, but they did not burn him. They did not even move him. Instead, the energy simply disappeared into his body, like water being absorbed by sand. He raised one hand, and the weapon stopped working. Every energy weapon in the chamber went dark at the same moment. The soldiers pressed their triggers again and again, but nothing happened. "Impossible," one of the more keen delegates whispered. "This is impossible." Do-Hwan began to walk toward the Groth soldiers. His footsteps echoed in the silence. With each step, the frost on the floor spread further, and his shadow grew larger and darker. "For 43 years, Do-Hwan said, and his voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. I have kept this part of myself locked away. I have been a good man, a peaceful man. I have laughed with my family, shared meals with friends, watched sunsets over mountains. I have been human." He stopped in front of Drathvok. The Groth commander was frozen in place, unable to move, unable to look away from those terrible eyes. "But before I was human, before any of us were human, we were something else. We were the thing that survived when nothing else could. We were the hunters who chased prey for days without rest. We were the creatures that refused to die, no matter what the universe threw at us. Ice ages, plagues, predators with teeth as long as my arm. We faced them all, and we won." Drathvok tried to speak, but only a choking sound came out. "You called us weak," Do-Hwan continued. "You said we have no claws, no venom, no armor. This is true. We lost those things because we did not need them. We became something more efficient, more dangerous. We became the most successful predator our planet has ever known. And we did not stop at animals." He reached out and placed one hand on Drathvok's forehead. The touch was gentle, almost kind. "Let me show you what we are." Drathvok's eyes went wide. His body began to shake. He was not seeing the chamber anymore. He was seeing something else, something that existed only in human memory, passed down through generations, coded into their DNA. He saw darkness. He saw fire. He saw a young planet covered in ice and death. He saw humans. They were not the soft, civilized creatures he had captured. They were thin and hungry, with wild eyes and sharp stones in their hands. They hunted in groups, communicating with sounds and gestures. They tracked their prey for days, following it until it collapsed from exhaustion. Then they killed it and ate it, and they did not waste anything. Not the meat, not the bones, not the skin. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was what they hunted when animals were not enough. Drathvok saw humans fighting against creatures of nightmare. Things with too many teeth. Things with too many eyes. Things that had no name because no one had survived long enough to name them. The humans fought these creatures with nothing but sticks and stones and fire, and somehow, impossibly, the humans won. Not just once. Every time, The nightmares were gone now, extinct, erased from the earth so completely that their bones had turned to dust. The humans had killed them all, not because they were hungry, but because they refused to share their planet with anything that threatened them. Drathvok felt the weight of 100,000 years of survival pressing down on his mind. He felt the cold determination that had allowed humans to face extinction again and again and always come back. He felt their patience, their endurance, their terrible, unstoppable persistence. And he understood something that made his blood turn to ice. Humans were not weak. Humans had simply decided to be gentle. They had chosen peace because they no longer needed violence. They had buried their old nature deep inside themselves, like a weapon locked away in a vault. But the weapon was still there. It had always been there. And someone had just opened the vault. The Vok fell to his knees, tears streaming from his yellow eyes. Around him, the other Groth soldiers were also falling. Whatever Dohwan was showing, their commander, it was spreading to them through some connection that no one understood. The allied species who had joined the Groth's plan were not protected. They felt it too. The more keen delegates began making high-pitched sounds of distress, their insect bodies twitching uncontrollably. The other soldiers dropped their weapons and crawled backward, trying to get away from a human who was not a human anymore. Hannah watched all of this with tears in her own eyes. She had known that Dohwan was different. She had suspected for years that there was something special about him, something that the government kept secret. Now she understood. Every human diplomat was chosen carefully. They were not selected for their intelligence or their speaking skills. They were selected because they carried the old blood, the genetic inheritance from humanity's darkest days. Most of the time, this inheritance lay dormant, but in moments of great danger, it could awaken. And when it awakened, it was terrifying. The Volthri High Speaker stood in its elevated seat, watching everything. Its crystal body was cracked with age, but its mind was still sharp. It had lived for thousands of years. It had seen many strange things, but it had never seen anything like this. "What are you doing to them?" the High Speaker asked. Its voice echoed through the chamber, cutting through the sounds of pain and fear. Dohwan turned to look at the ancient Velthari. When he spoke, his voice was almost normal again, but there was still an echo of something else behind it. "I am showing them the truth. I am showing them why the precursors warned against attacking humanity. I am showing them what we really are." "And what are you?" Dohwan smiled. It was a sad smile, heavy with knowledge that no one should have to carry. "We are survivors. We are the children of a death world, a planet that tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. We are the result of endless struggle, endless pain, endless adaptation. We have faced extinction more times than any other species in this galaxy, and every time we have won." He looked around the chamber at the fallen soldiers, the weeping delegates, the shocked observers. "We became gentle because we chose to, not because we had to. We put away our old nature because we wanted to be something better. But we never forgot. We cannot forget. It lives in our blood, in our bones, in our deepest memories. And when we are threatened, when our existence is at stake, it wakes up." He turned back to Drathvok, who was still on his knees, his mind broken by what he had seen. "You should have listened to the archives," Dohwan said softly. "You should have left us alone." The darkness in the chamber began to fade. The frost on the floor started to melt. The lights flickered back on, weak at first, then stronger. Dohwan's eyes returned to normal. His shadow became just a shadow again. He looked tired now, more tired than any person should look. The thing inside him was going back to sleep, but the effort of controlling it had cost him greatly. He looked at Hannah. She was pale and shaking, but she had not run. None of the humans had run. They had stayed behind him, just as he had asked. "It is almost over," he said to her. Stay strong a little longer. Then he turned to face the council, and his voice rang out across the chamber like a bell. Humanity came here in peace. We wanted only friendship. You chose violence. You chose betrayal. Now you have seen what that choice has awakened. Remember this day. Tell your children and your children's children. Tell the whole galaxy. We do not want war. We do not want conquest. But if you force us to become what we used to be. He paused, letting the silence grow heavy. Then we will remind the universe why the darkness used to be afraid of us. No one in the chamber dared to speak, no one dared to move. And somewhere in the depths of space, on a small blue planet called Earth, something ancient stirred in its sleep and smiled. The council chamber was silent, except for the sounds of breathing and crying. Groth soldiers lay on the floor, their weapons forgotten beside them. Their yellow eyes stared at nothing, seeing horrors that existed only in their minds. Some of them whispered words in their own language, prayers to gods they had not believed in since childhood. Drathvok was still on his knees in front of Dowan. His scales had lost their shine. His body trembled like a leaf in a storm. He was a commander who had led armies into battle, who had conquered planets and crushed rebellions. Now he looked like a child who had woken from the worst nightmare of his life, only to find that the nightmare was real. Please, he whispered. Please make it stop. Dowan looked down at him, and there was no hatred in his eyes. There was only exhaustion and a deep, ancient sadness. I am not doing anything to you anymore, Dowan said. What you are feeling now is just a memory of what I showed you. It will fade in time, but it will never go away completely. He stepped back from Drathvok and turned to face the rest of the chamber. The alien delegates who had stayed to watch the execution were pressed against their seats, trying to make themselves as small as possible. The Morkeen, who had laughed at human weakness just yesterday, were huddled together, their many legs tangled in fear. The Velthari High Speaker had not moved from its elevated seat. Its crystal body was very still, but small cracks had appeared across its surface. These cracks were not from age. They were from stress, from trying to process information that should not exist. You have made your point, Ambassador, the High Speaker said. Its voice was different now, less cold, more careful. The Groth and their allies have violated council law. They will be punished. Will they? Dowan asked. Or will you punish only the soldiers while letting their leaders go free? Will you write reports and hold meetings and talk about what happened today until everyone forgets and nothing changes? Will you write reports and hold meetings and talk about what happened today until everyone forgets and nothing changes? The High Speaker did not answer. Dowan nodded slowly. I thought so. The Council does not like to deal with difficult problems. It is easier to look away, to let others do the dirty work, as Drathvok said earlier. You knew what the Groth were planning. Perhaps you did not help them, but you did nothing to stop them. You would have watched them kill me and my people, and then you would have expressed your regret and moved on. That is not true, the High Speaker said, but its voice lacked conviction. It is true, and we both know it. Dowan walked to the center of the chamber and looked around at all the faces watching him. Some were alien faces with no expression. Others showed fear, anger, confusion, or something that might have been respect. Let me tell you something about humanity, Dowan said. Something the archives do not mention because the precursors did not understand it themselves. He paused, gathering his thoughts. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, almost gentle. We are not monsters. What you saw today, what I showed the Groth, that is not who we are. It is who we were. It is the memory of what we had to become in order to survive a world that wanted us dead. But we left that behind. We chose to be something different. He looked at Hana and the other human diplomats. They were still standing against the wall, watching him with wide eyes. He smiled at them, and it was a human smile, warm and real. Humans have done terrible things in our history. We have made wars. We have hurt each other. We have nearly destroyed our own planet more than once. But we have also made beautiful things. Art, music, stories that make people laugh and cry. We have learned to love, to forgive, to hope for better days. That is who we are now. That is who we want to be. He turned back to the council. The thing inside me, the thing that sleeps in all humans, we call it many names. The survival instinct, the will to live, the darkness in our hearts. But it is not evil. It is just old. It comes from a time before good and evil, before law and justice, before anything except a simple need to exist. And we have learned to control it. We keep it locked away because we believe that peace is better than war. That kindness is stronger than cruelty. He looked directly at the Velthury High Speaker. But do not make the mistake of thinking that we cannot unlock it again. Do not think that because we choose peace, we are incapable of war. The Groth learned this lesson today. I hope you will not need to learn it yourselves. The High Speaker was silent for a long moment. The cracks in its crystal body were still there, small lines of darkness in its otherwise perfect form. What do you want, Ambassador? It finally asked. What does humanity want from this council? The same thing we wanted before, Dowan said. Trade rights, recognition, the chance to join the galactic community as equal partners. Nothing more. After what has happened today, after what you have shown us, you could ask for anything. You could demand tribute. You could threaten war. Many species would do exactly that. Dawan shook his head. Then those species have not learned what humanity has learned. Power is not the goal. Power is just a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or for evil. We have no interest in ruling the galaxy. We have no interest in revenge. We just want to live in peace and explore the stars and make friends with our neighbors. The High Speaker looked at Dowan for a long time. Then, slowly it moved down from its elevated seat. Its crystal legs carried it across the chamber floor, past the fallen Groth soldiers, past the frightened delegates, until it stood directly in front of the human ambassador. You are a strange species, the High Speaker said. I have lived for 3,000 years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species destroy themselves with their own power. But I have never seen a species that had the strength to conquer and chose not to. Perhaps you have not been looking in the right places, Dawan said. The High Speaker made a sound that might have been a laugh. Perhaps not. It turned to face the chamber. When it spoke, its voice carried the authority of ages. The Council recognizes the crimes committed by the Groth Dominion and their allies. Their leaders will be tried and punished according to galactic law. Their soldiers will be detained until their mental conditions can be evaluated. The Groth soldiers were still lying on the floor, unable to move. Whatever Dowan had shown them had broken something in their minds. They would need help, perhaps for many years, before they could function normally again. The Council further recognizes the species called humanity as a full member of the galactic community, with all rights and privileges that membership provides. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some delegates looked angry. Others looked relieved. Most looked confused. This is unusual, one of the more keen said, its voice still shaky. Humanity has only recently developed faster than light travel. They do not meet the standard requirements for full membership. Requirements can be changed, the High Speaker said. And I believe that humanity has demonstrated qualities that are more important than technological advancement. They have shown restraint. They have shown mercy. They could have killed everyone in this chamber today, and instead, They chose to teach us a lesson without taking a single life. It looked at Dawan again. That is the kind of species this council needs. Not more warriors. Not more conquerors. We have enough of those. What we need is wisdom. What we need is balance. What we need is someone who can remind us that there is more to civilization than power. Dawan bowed his head. Thank you, High Speaker. Humanity accepts this honor and will do our best to deserve it. The High Speaker nodded, then turned away. This session is ended. Clear the chamber. Get medical help for the injured. Aliens began to move, slowly at first, then with more purpose. Medics came for the Groth soldiers. Officials came to take statements. The energy barriers over the exits finally came down. Hana walked to Dawan's side. His face was pale, and his hands were shaking. The effort of controlling whatever was inside him had cost him greatly. Sir, are you all right? She asked. I will be, he said. I just need to rest. And I need to remember. Remember what? He looked at her with tired eyes. How to be human again. It is harder than you might think after letting the old part out. It wants to stay awake. It likes being free. I have to convince it to go back to sleep. Hannah took his arm and helped him walk toward the exit. The other human diplomats followed, their faces showing a mixture of pride and fear and something that might have been awe. Sir, Hannah said quietly, how long have you known? About what you are? Dawan was silent for a moment. I first felt it when I was 12 years old. A bully at school was hurting a younger child. I tried to stop him, and he turned on me. He was bigger than me, stronger. He pushed me down and started kicking me. And then, something woke up. Just for a moment. I looked at that boy, and I felt something inside me that wanted to hurt him. Not just stop him. Destroy him. It was the most frightening moment of my life. What happened? I closed my eyes and made it go back to sleep. The bully ran away. He never bothered anyone again. Later, I learned that people like me exist in every generation. We are rare, but we are always there. The government knows about us. They train us, teach us to control our gift. And when diplomats are needed for dangerous missions, they send us. They reached the entrance to the docking bay where their ship waited. Dawan stopped and looked back at the council station one last time. Today could have gone very differently. The horizon's edge floated in the docking bay, its engines warm and ready for the long journey home. It was still a small ship, still unimpressive compared to the massive vessels that surrounded the council station. But the aliens who passed by it now looked at it differently. They did not see a primitive craft from a backward planet. They saw the ship that had carried something terrible, something wonderful, something that had changed everything. Inside the ship, Ambassador Park Dawan sat alone in his quarters. The room was small and simple, with a bed, a desk, and a window that looked out at the stars. He had not slept since the incident in the council chamber. His body was exhausted, but his mind would not rest. There was a soft knock at his door. Come in, he said. Hana entered and stood near the doorway. She was carrying a cup of tea, steam rising from it in gentle curls. The others are worried about you, she said. You have not eaten anything. You have not spoken to anyone. Dawan looked at her and managed a small smile. I am sorry. I did not mean to worry anyone. I just needed time to think. Hannah walked forward and placed the tea on his desk. Then she sat down in the chair across from him. Sir, may I ask you something? Of course. In the council chamber, when you showed the Groth what you showed them, did you choose what they saw? Or did it happen on its own? Dawan considered the question carefully. A little of both, he finally said. The old part of me, the thing that sleeps in human blood, it has its own will. When it wakes up, it wants to destroy threats. It wants to kill. But I've spent my whole life learning to guide it, to shape it. Instead of letting it kill, I made it show. I made it share memories instead of violence. It was difficult, but you did it. You saved everyone, including the people who tried to kill you. Yes, Gohan picked up the tea and held it in both hands, letting the warmth spread into his fingers. But I am not sure if I did the right thing. Hana looked surprised. What do you mean? You saved our lives. You proved that humanity is not weak. You won membership in the council for our entire species. How could that be wrong? Because now they are afraid of us. Dowan took a sip of tea. It was bitter, the way he liked it. Before today, the galaxy did not think about humans at all. We were too small, too insignificant. Now they know what we really are. They know what sleeps inside us. And fear can make people do terrible things. He set down the cup and looked out the window at the stars. When I was young, I read many history books about Earth. I learned about all the wars, all the conflicts, all the times that fear led to destruction. Countries built weapons because they were afraid of other countries. People hurt each other because they were afraid of differences. Fear is a poison, Hana. It spreads and grows and makes everything worse. But you had no choice, Hana said. They were going to kill us. They were going to attack Earth. What else could you have done? I could have let them kill me. Dowan's voice was quiet but steady. One death might have been better than showing the whole galaxy our true nature. My life is not worth more than the peace of billions. Sir, you cannot think that way. I can, and I do. Every human who carries the old blood thinks about it. We know what we are. We know what we can become. And we know that every time we use our gift, we risk making things worse instead of better. They sat in silence for a while. Outside the window, a ship passed by, its lights blinking in the darkness. Life in the galaxy continued, even as everything changed. Sir, Hana said eventually, can I tell you what I saw today? Dawan looked at her. What did you see? I saw a man who had the power to destroy everyone in that room, and who chose not to. I saw a man who was beaten, insulted, humiliated, and who still tried to teach instead of punish. I saw strength that I cannot even begin to understand, and I saw mercy that made that strength beautiful instead of terrible. She reached across and put her hand on his arm. The galaxy might be afraid of us now. That is true. But they also saw what you saw. They saw that humanity has chosen to be kind. They saw that we could be monsters, but we decided to be good instead. And maybe, just maybe, that will matter more than the fear. Dawan looked at her hand on his arm. He remembered what it felt like to be human, to be touched by another person, to be part of a community instead of a weapon. Slowly, the tension in his shoulders began to fade. You are wise beyond your years, Hana, he said. I learned from a good teacher. He laughed, and it was a real laugh, warm and human. I am not sure about that. But thank you for trying to make me feel better. There was another knock at the door. This time, it was Cho Taiwan, the young diplomat who had been struck during the attack. His head was bandaged, but his eyes were clear. Ambassador, we have received a message from the council, Taiwan said. The Velthari High Speaker wishes to speak with you before we leave. Dohan nodded and stood up. Very well. Tell them I will be there shortly. Taiwan hesitated. Sir, the message also said that the Groth Dominion has surrendered. Their entire government has agreed to face trial for what happened today. And 3 other species have requested to open diplomatic relations with Earth. They want to meet us. They want to learn about our culture, our history, our art. Hana smiled. That is good news, is it not? It is unexpected news, Dohan said. But I suppose unexpected can be good sometimes. He walked to the door, then stopped and looked back at his 2 young colleagues. Whatever happens next, I want you both to remember something. Humanity is not defined by the power we have. We are defined by the choices we make. We could have been conquerors. We could have been tyrants. Instead, we chose to be explorers, artists, dreamers. That choice is more important than any weapon, any ability, any ancient inheritance. Never forget that. We won't, sir, Hana and Taiwan said together. Dowan walked through the ship to the communication room. The Valkyrie High speaker appeared on the screen, its crystal body still showing the cracks from earlier, but its voice strong and clear. Ambassador Park, the High speaker said. I wanted to speak with you privately before you return to Earth. Of course, High speaker. What do you wish to discuss? I wish to apologize. Not just for what happened today, but for how this council has treated your species since you first arrived. We judged you by your appearance, by your technology, by standards that mean nothing in the face of true worth. We were wrong. Dowan bowed his head slightly. I accept your apology, but I hope you will not apologize only to me. There are other young species in this galaxy who are judged the same way we were judged. Perhaps they deserve more consideration as well. The High speaker was silent for a moment. Then it made that sound again, the one that might have been a laugh. You are trying to change our entire society through one conversation, Ambassador. I am trying to plant a seed, Dawan said. What grows from it is up to you. Very well. I will think about your words. And Ambassador, when you return to Earth, tell your leaders this. The Galactic Council does not offer friendship easily. But when we offer it, we mean it. Humanity has our friendship now. Whatever comes next, you will not face it alone. The screen went dark. Dawan stood there for a moment, thinking about everything that had happened, everything that might still happen. Then he walked back to where his team was waiting. Prepare for departure, he said. It is time to go home. The horizon's edge detached from the station and turned toward the distant light of Earth's sun. As it accelerated into the darkness between stars, Dowan stood at the window of the bridge and watched the council station grow smaller and smaller until it was just another light among millions. Hana came to stand beside him. Sir, she said, are you all right now? He thought about the question. He thought about the thing that slept inside him, the ancient memory of survival that had awakened and then gone back to sleep. He thought about the fear in Drathvog's eyes, the respect in the High speaker's voice, the hope in Taiwan's face. I will be, he said. It takes time after something like this, but I have been through it before, and I will go through it again. That is what humans do. We endure, we adapt, we survive, and then we try to be better. Better than what? Better than ourselves. Better than we were yesterday. Better than the universe expects us to be. He smiled at her, and this time the smile reached his eyes. That is the real secret of humanity, Hana. Not the power that sleeps in our blood, but the choice we make every single day to be good instead of terrible. That choice is harder than any battle, and we make it anyway. Hana nodded slowly. She still had many questions, many things she did not understand. But she trusted Dowan. She trusted humanity. And for now, that was enough. The ship jumped to light speed, leaving behind a galaxy that would never see humans the same way again. In the council station, aliens talked in whispers about what they had witnessed. On 100 worlds, the story spread. The soft, fragile humans were not what they seemed. But the most important part of the story was not about power or fear. It was about a tired old diplomat who had every reason to destroy his enemies and chose mercy instead. It was about a species that had been shaped by violence and reached for peace anyway. It was about the strange and wonderful truth that sometimes the most powerful thing in the universe is the decision to be kind. Park. Dawan closed his eyes and let the hum of the engines carry him toward home. Behind him, the stars burned bright,